Good afternoon, everybody. Uh, Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear members of IGCC, and our honored speakers from SKP, uh, Deshit Parekh and Lucky Ahuja. It's truly a pleasure to welcome all of you to this budget session. I think a long awaited budget session after the speech ended by our Honorable Finance Minister yesterday. As always, there's been confusions, questions to be asked, uncertainties, etc. So that is the main purpose of clearing the gray skies to clear any of the apprehensions that you people have. As we know, the Honorable Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman tabled the Union Budget 2021 yesterday, highlighting the 6 pillars of the government's initiative on boosting the economy by giving impetus to healthcare, infrastructure, and industries. Yes, attempts have been made to boost optimism. In the present scenario, with uncertainties everywhere, the government is trying its best to make people more optimistic and have a better outlook for the future. Some of the proposed reforms and relaxations are set to reduce the compliance burden, drive the economy, and abate the negative effects of the pandemic. Uh, Usually in India, we see that things become more and more bureaucratic, but our speakers will highlight that this time there have been some relaxations in terms of reporting and cross-checking and less of policing that has taken place. So with this in mind, we have hosted this uh, uh, seminar where the two experts from SKP will not only analyze, but they will also assess the impact of the budget on industry and consumers. Individually, we are all consumers, and we are ultimately always looking at the direct tax implication on us and how GST and the other taxes would affect our day-to-day living. So I'm sure our honorable speakers will also convince you that things are not so bad as we or as the press makes it out to be. Well, I now introduce CA Nishit Parekh, uh, the gentleman with specs. He's a director, direct taxation at SKP, a well-known consultation and CA firm in Mumbai with branches in other cities as well in India. He has over 13 years of extensive experience in advising several domestic and international corporates on income tax, international tax, FEMA, and structuring inbound and outbound investments. Nishit has authored numerous articles and which have been published in major industry journals such as International Taxation, uh, taxman.com, Tax Sutra, etc., and is a regular speaker at various industry forums. So, welcome, Nishit, and we look forward to getting some gyan and clarification from you. We also have Mr. Lucky Ahuja. He is the Senior Manager Indirect Taxes in SKP. He has 12 years of extensive experience in the field of indirect tax. Uh, uh, on matters of advisory, compliances, regulatory, and litigation matters uh, directly related to the great GST, service tax, custom laws, and foreign trade policies. Lucky has assisted numerous domestic and international companies in uh, to assess their potential, or rather the potential impact of GST and other related taxes on their business functions. And he has suggested alternative business models to minimize their tax liability. So one is always looking at how to make sure that you are not only compliant with the tax regime in place, but also see how best you can modify your business modules to make sure that your bottom line is not affected. Having said that, now I hand over the mic to Nishit, and I assure you that it is not going to be a dull moment today afternoon. And please feel free to ask your questions and at the end. Monaz and the other organizers, Sana, will be glad to assist you in any way. Anyway, all the best, and keep safe and keep healthy and be compliant. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Desai, for the kind introduction. So I hope my screen is visible. Now I will take you through the direct tax proposal, and post that my colleague Lucky will take you through the indirect tax proposal. So this budget came in backdrop of a big pandemic, and there was huge expectations out of this budget. And if you go by the stock market reaction, it looked like the budget has gone down well with the investors. Uh, However, from individual taxation perspective and corporate taxation perspective, we need to see whether this budget really is a blockbuster budget, or there were certain finer details which were not announced. Because if you have seen the budget on television yesterday, the announcement for direct tax proposal was hardly for 5-7 minutes. But if you go through the fine print, there are a few other points which were not captured. So I'll take you through all of those in the next 30 minutes. But starting off with some of the key economic indicators which were highlighted by our Honorable Finance Minister, and very important ones. On the GDP, given the pandemic year, we have contracted by 7.7%, and it is projected that there would be a kind of V-shaped recovery in 21-22, and it is expected to be coming up to 11%, the GDP growth for 21-22. On the fiscal deficit side, given the spendings which the finance minister had to do in terms of giving out packages for poor and to meet the challenges of pandemic, the fiscal deficit slipped to 9.5% of GDP for 2021, and the best estimates for 21-22 are pegged at 6.8%. And overall, there is a commitment of government to bring it down to 4.5% by 25-26. So the government has gone out in terms of spending without worrying too much about fiscal deficit. But now it would be prudent for them to control it, and that's how they are targeting it. We were current account surplus, that is our exports were higher than imports. This is mainly on account of curbing of imports and the China issue, and restrictions on imports from China has resulted in a current account surplus for India almost after 17 years. FDI inflows remain robust, with huge number of FDI inflows coming in, and overall capital expenditure also was around INR 5540 billion for 21-22. Other key highlights of the budget were, as Mr. Desai pointed out, there was huge focus on health, and actually because of this pandemic, health has come to forefront, and how India has been fighting this entire pandemic also gives one more opportunity for the government to rebuild on the health situation in India, so that in future if something like this comes up, we are prepared and there is no lockdown kind of situation again. Second thrust was on infrastructure and capital expenditure. So the government has gone ahead and announced various capital expenditure which they are going to incur over next 5 years, and that's what I think. So the entire street has liked, because the entire focus has been on capital expenditure. Health budget has been increased. PM Atmanirbhar Swasth Bharat Yojana has been launched with a huge capex, plus 35,000 crore has been allocated for COVID-19 vaccine. Production link incentive scheme has been launched to create manufacturing global champions across 13 sectors. Thrust is, in order to meet all this expenditure, as we all know, there were no increase on corporate tax or individual tax. So major thrust to meet all this capital expenditure is through disinvestment and privatization. So companies like BPCL, Pawan Hans, Air India are targeted by the company. Concor are targeted by government to privatize in this year. They are looking at around 1.75 lakh crores to be mopped up from such disinvestment. Lot of strategic reworking or demergers or conversions will happen on the public bank side to consolidate bank as well as to de-risk the banks. Banking deposit is going to go up. Guarantee on banking deposit is to go up from 1 lakh to 5 lakh, which was announced. LIC IPO again would hit the markets in next year probably, and that's where what is being said on the street, that even if LIC IPO is hit on the street, then all the capital expenditure would get recovered out of that IPO. FDI limit for insurance sector has been hiked from 49% to 74%. So these were some of the key highlights on the economic side and on the fiscal side. Now moving to direct tax proposal, from a personal taxation perspective, due to this pandemic, there was a hope that either there would be some flexibility done in the slab rates or there would be some increase in standard deduction for the salaried. But there has been status quo maintained on that, so there is no change. So there is no benefit given to the individual, neither there is any additional tax or inheritance tax which was feared by HNI, which has come in. So that way it is neutral in that sense. However, one hit which has come from an individual taxation perspective is that earlier interest on provident fund. So I'm talking about provident fund contribution done through our own salaries, whereby we contribute, employer contribution is there and employee contribution is there, and not a general provident fund. There was a limit of 20 lakhs which can be contributed by an employee. Now they have come up that if any contribution is made by an employee which is in excess of 0.25 million, that is 2.5 lakh rupees, then the interest on over and above that contribution of 2.5 lakhs would become taxable. How the interest computation will happen, whether there would be interest on interest will become taxable or not, all that mechanism is not provided, but they have specified that this will be notified shortly. So this could be one hit to kind of employees or people who are salaried class but are contributing huge amounts in public provident scheme, because till today the entire interest portion was exempt, and a good, in comparison to the fixed deposit, there was a good interest which you are getting on a tax-free basis from the provident fund. Another important change which is impacting individual is when you buy a unit linked insurance plan, till date there were no taxation on that. However, now the government has provided that if the premium paid by you on ULIP exceeds by 0.25 million, then it would become taxable on maturity. Obviously, if it is received on death, then there is no taxation still, but if you receive the money on maturity, then there would be taxation. And in order to ensure that no planning can be done, this is made effective with respect to policy issued after 1st of February 2021. So it is not retrospective, but it will impact on all the policies which are issued after 1st February 2021. There was some issue in terms of non-residents who were earlier non-resident and made some contribution to overseas retirement funds. So government has mentioned that they will prescribe rules to ensure that they are not doubly taxed. And one of the important amendment or one of the important announcement which the FM made, that we are bowing down to our senior citizen and would want to give them some kind of relief. But when we read the fine print, the relief actually for not filing of tax return by senior citizen who are 75 plus can be availed only by very few people, because the rules are very stringent. It says senior citizen earning only pension and interest income, and both pension income as well as interest income has to be from the same specified bank. So if you are, say, earning even 1 rupee of dividend income which is taxable, or any other income which is taxable, then these provisions are not applicable to you. Also, if you have multiple accounts and you are earning interest from other bank accounts, which is not the account where you are getting your pension, this scheme does not become applicable to you. So this scheme, while many senior citizens would have expected relief from filing tax return, but in my view, it would remain on paper because very few would be able to meet these stringent conditions. On the corporate taxation side, there is no change. Luckily, they have continued with the regime which they had announced in September 2020, 25% tax rate regime for all companies, and concessional 15% tax rate, which is effectively 17% on new manufacturing companies which are set up before 2023, would continue. Big relief in terms of there was some murmurs or expectation that companies may have some additional surcharge or cess on account of COVID, but luckily there is no such announcement. So it's good news for the corporates from a taxation perspective. Other important amendments from a corporate sides are employee contribution to Provident Fund. Earlier, there are specific dates provided under the Provident Fund Act for depositing this contributions which the company receives from employee. Earlier, what used to happen that there were delays in this deposit. Still, the companies were asking for a deduction of this because overall they were saying that these payments are contributed before the due date of filing tax return, and they are covered under section 43B, which allows for payment till the due date of filing of return. And hence there were many judicial precedents, most were in favor of taxpayer, wherein the courts have allowed that if this contribution, even though are not within the due date provided under the Provident Fund Act, but are covered under the larger ambit of 43B, which provides for contribution up to the date of allowance of contribution on payment basis up to the date of return filing, those were allowed. But now those that loophole has been plugged. 43B employee contribution has been removed, and now if it is beyond the PF dates provided under the PF Act, then it would be disallowed. One big relief for small businesses is that tax audit limit has been increased from 5 crores to 10 crores, that is INR 50 million to 100 million. Only thing is that this would be applicable only in those cases where 95% of transactions are through digital mode. So income as well as expense both have to be checked to see whether they are through digital mode. Moving forward, there were some important changes on mergers and restructuring aspects which many companies undertake. So earlier there was this classic tax planning which many large corporates were doing. Slum sale basically refers to buying of a business by a particular entity on a slum sale basis, that is buying of an undertaking from another company without assigning value individually to different assets. So in those cases where the consideration was paid other than through cash, that is either by way of issuance of some shares or some debentures, the corporates were taking the position that slum sale only covers cases where there is a monetary consideration, and if there is no monetary consideration, or if I may call it, it's a kind of slum exchange, then it is not technically covered under the slum sale definition. So this loophole was exploited by many, and there were favorable judicial precedents whereby taxpayers were allowed this benefit. In order to loop that plug that loophole, and also to counter aggressive tax planning, the definition has now been amended to include any kind of transfer, exchange or relinquishment would be covered under slum sale. Another big change was no depreciation on goodwill. So there was a Supreme Court decision of Smith Securities whereby it has been held that if while purchasing any business, if you have paid in excess of the value of the business, the excess was recorded as goodwill in the books of the buyer, and on that goodwill was considered as an intangible, and on that 25% depreciation was allowed on a year-on-year basis. In order to overcome the favorable tax rulings, the government has now amended the provisions of the act everywhere wherever this mention is coming, to say that goodwill is a non-depreciable asset and new depreciation shall not be allowed on goodwill. So this creates a very large impact on the existing deals, because whatever recent deals have happened would have factored a certain tax cost while acquiring a particular business, and while counting that or while factoring that tax cost, they would have taken depreciation as a deductible item on the goodwill, and that's how they would have worked out a certain tax cost. But now that is going to change, which is going to impact their IIRs on the deals, and people will have to relook at those numbers again. Earlier, what was happening that since goodwill depreciation was available, people were not in a way bothered. So if I'm buying a business for 100 crores and the actual value of the business was 80 crores, I was recording that 20 crore additional as goodwill and claiming depreciation on the same. Now it will be very important for companies to bifurcate that 20 crores into different aspects. So because depreciation on commercial rights is still available, only what has moved out is goodwill. So now people will try to bifurcate, or they should actually look at how they can bifurcate. If they have purchased commercial rights earlier, if they were clubbing it under goodwill, now they will have to get a separate valuation done for that and record it in order to claim depreciation. So now critical valuation would become very critical, as this bifurcation would help the companies in saving some bit of tax cost. Second, as I mentioned earlier, government is looking at divestment of PSUs, and in order to not have any tax impact on public sector units, they have provided relevant provisions to give them benefits, saying that reconstruction or splitting up of PSU would be deemed to demerger, and hence it would be a tax neutral transaction. Also, they have amended the relevant provisions to allow them to claim brought forward of losses. Second was on partnership form. So there was again this classic controversy. If you look at the current provisions under the law, any assets which are distributed to a partner of a partnership firm on dissolution was considered as transfer for tax purposes, and that was taxed. So what many partnership firms were doing, rather than doing a dissolution, they were adding new partners and giving exit to old partners by way of retirement and giving them a larger consideration to them. This entire thing was argued that this is not a dissolution of partnership firm, it is a reconstitution. So the provisions which are there to tax dissolution should not apply, and only this entire transaction was treated as tax free by the partnership firm or by the partner himself. To plug this loophole, again, now the scope of the section has been widened. It now clearly says that transfer of capital asset or any money or any other asset by the partnership firm on resolution or reconstitution would be taxed as capital gain in the hands of partnership firm. So now this loophole has been plugged, and simultaneously they have said that capital balance of the partner would be considered as a cost of acquisition to determine the capital gains on this transaction. Obviously, while taking the capital balance of the partner, you will not have to give effect to the revaluation. So if it is artificially inflated by way of revaluation of asset, that will not be considered. So moving on, affordable housing has been given a push. The timelines for affordable housing has been pushed by 1 year from 21 to 22. Rental housing projects have been included in affordable housing. And one of the very major change was, so earlier if you were doing a transaction which was below the stamp duty value, you were getting a leeway of 10%. So you could have done a transaction at 90% of the stamp duty value and still stamp duty value would not be replaced. That 10% has increased to 20%, mainly to ensure that the developers can sell off their property even at a lower price than the stamp duty value, because while the housing demands have gone down, but the stamp duty rates have gone up. So in order to avoid that mismatch and also ensure that developers are able to sell off their units, this limit has been increased. Major boost in terms of promoting the IFSC has been done. So they have said that if you are going to set up a eligible investment fund in IFSC, then it will not be considered as having a business connection in India. Only condition are that you have to commence the operation on or before 31st of March 2024. Tax exemption has been extended to various things if it is done with ISFC. So any investment division or offshore banking unit if it is set up in IFSC, it is exempt. If any non-resident carries out any transaction of derivatives or forward contracts with an offshore banking unit located in IFSC, then it would be exempt. Any royalty received by a non-resident from a unit which is in IFSC would be exempt. Capital gains on sale of aircraft by a unit of IFSC would be exempt. And capital gain, so they are encouraging people to relocate to IFSC. So they are saying that if you have a original fund and you want to move that fund from existing place, that is existing country, to IFSC, whatever capital gains happen on that movement, we will not tax the same. Startup, again, extension. So if you remember, startup has been given exemption for 7 out of 10 years subject to certain conditions, and that benefit was available up to 31st March 2021. That has been extended by 1 year. And also, if you are having any capital gains from sale of your property, you can reinvest the same in eligible startup and used to get a tax break. That benefit also has been extended up to 31st March 2022. Again, to promote investment into India, sovereign wealth funds and pension funds were given benefits on the capital gains and dividend income which they are going to earn from India in the last budget. Further relaxation has been proposed that even if you don't want to set up directly, you can invest in AIFs who are having investment in eligible infrastructure company. Now they are allowed to invest in InvITs. They are allowed to invest through a holding company. They are allowed to invest in NBFC. So a lot of provisions to enable this sovereign wealth funds and pension funds to come and invest into India have been done. Currently, Abu Dhabi fund has been notified as a sovereign wealth fund, and government is going to notify more funds who would qualify under this sovereign wealth fund and pension funds. One of the big debate of last year after introduction of tax on dividend was the taxation of dividend for FPIs. So due to the provisions under the Income Tax Act, which provided for a 20% withholding tax rate on payment made to FPI for dividend, and the provisions were drafted in such a manner that the FPI, even though their taxability of income was 5%, 10% as per the provisions of the tax treaty, were still not able to claim the tax treaty benefit because the provisions were worded in such a manner. Plus, there was a decision of PILCOM, not on the same section, but on some similar section relating to non-resident sports person, whereby it has been upheld by Supreme Court that if specific withholding tax provisions have been provided, you have to use those while applying the tax rate. So now it will be very important for companies to actually check and see how this entire thing pans out. And now companies would be required to check verification of the tax treaty, because now the provisions have been amended. They will also have to see whether the FPI is a beneficial owner, and MLI provisions also become very critical. So equalization levy was one of the very important law which was introduced last time, whereby online sale of goods or online provision of services by e-commerce operator was set to be taxed at 2% if the overall transaction limit exceeds INR 20 million. So there was no clarity on what is online sale of goods and online provision of services. Now they have defined what is online sale of goods and online provision of services. So here again the definition is wide and there could be huge ramification, because acceptance of offer for sale, placing the purchase order, acceptance of purchase order, payment of consideration, all of this, some bit of it is happening online and some bit of it is happening offline. Then what will happen to those transactions? There is no clarity as of now. Another anomaly which they have corrected is that earlier they had said that if you are paying EL, then you are exempt from income tax. Now they have changed it to say that EL is not applicable if you are taxable under the Income Tax Act or treaty as per royalty or FTS. So earlier there was a anomaly that people were saying that if I pay 2% EL, I will not have to pay tax on royalty of 10%. So that has been now corrected and appropriate amendments have been brought. One more big compliance burden on the company setup is withholding tax on purchase of goods. So last year they introduced TCS on sale of goods. Now they have introduced withholding tax on purchase of goods. While the limits have been kept high, but this again baffles me, because huge bit of compliances. The companies would have undergone change in their accounting and IT system last year to incorporate TCS. Now again, they have to add one more aspect to it, that is TDS. Penal rate of 0.1% is, rate of 0.1% is provided, and there is an additional 5% rate if there is no PAN available. And if these provisions are applicable, TCS provisions would not apply. Again, penal withholding tax rates have been provided for non-filers. So if as a payer, if you will have to take more declaration, because if somebody is not filing tax return, you are obliged to deduct tax at higher rates, and you don't have any other mechanism to identify whether he's filing tax return or not. You will have to rely on his declaration, collect those declaration, and to safeguard yourself, you will have to keep those declaration. So this is again a very stringent compliance requirement, and it is cast on the payer, so it could become a real challenge for the companies. One of the highlights of the budget changes was reducing the timelines for assessment by 3 months. So now faster assessment process will happen in line with their government's objective of going corruption free. Earlier assessment as well as assessment as well as appeals were under faceless proceeding. Now they have moved IT-AT also under faceless, and the scheme would be notified. Entire new process for reassessment has been made effective from April 1, 2021, and the best part is that reopening of cases time period has been reduced from 6 years to 3 years. Only in specific cases it can go up to 10 years. So this is a brilliant move, and in terms of reducing the litigation and harassing the taxpayers would go down. But only fear now this creates is that since this is applicable from 1st of April 21, do we see a flurry of notices coming for reassessment up to 31st March 21? So that needs to be seen how the tax authorities react to this. Board for advance ruling has been introduced. So earlier AAR has been abolished. Now a new board has been set up. So earlier AAR rulings were binding on both taxpayer as well as the tax authorities. Now they have said that it would not be binding. So now both can appeal the order if they are not agreeing with the order, and directly go to High Court. So probably this will actually help foreign companies mainly to go to the High Court in a fast track manner. And they have set up a dispute resolution committee for small taxpayer. This scheme shall apply only in those cases where the return income is less than INR 5 million and overall tax or the variation proposed in the specified order is less than INR 1 million. Again, search and survey and prosecution cases have been kept out of this DRC. Only good thing is that DRC has been given powers to reduce the penalty, nullify the penalty or interest. So that's a good thing, and here it is mainly for the small taxpayer. Again, it needs to be seen how the scheme is formulated, how helpful it is. Again, this would be jurisdictionless and faceless to avoid corruption. So with this, I end my presentation, and once I'll hand over to Lucky for his part, and post that if there are any questions, would be happy to take those.
Thanks, Nishit, for giving the finer prints on direct tax proposal. Now we will move on to indirect tax proposals. Yeah. So we know with the introduction of GST in 2017, the union budget has already lost its sheen, right? Because the power to amend laws and give notifications now rests with the GST Council. So there are not much to look forward in union budget, but still there are some notable amendment in GST and custom laws. So we'll deliberate upon those in next slides. So one of the interesting change which has been proposed under union budget is that a retrospective amendment has been proposed to treat the transaction between associations and its member as a supply. It is interesting to note that there was a Calcutta Club Supreme Court ruling where the Supreme Court has held that there is a concept of mutuality. You cannot provide services or goods on your own or to your own. So what government has done that to nullify that judgment, they have introduced they have proposed a retrospective amendment in section 7 of the GST Act, And now all those transactions would be subject to GST, whether it is provided by association to member or vice versa. So now again, it is seen that the government's it's not kind of a willing to go by what the law has been provided or pronounced by or clarified by the various judicial forums, and they are continuously undoing whatever been clarified through those. So that is what an interesting amendment has come under GST. Now moving on to the second most problematic part, if we talk about the industry, they are struggling to keep an hold on their input tax credit, which is mainly dependent upon the compliances to be made by the supplier. Now we know that in October 2019, it was proposed that the availability of credit would be limited to whatever is matching it to a plus 20%. And gradually it was reduced to 10%, then 5%, and now a day has come where government wants to go back to their originally proposed idea of giving those credit only, which is matching into a report. So that is what it has been proposed now. Now everything has to be matched with your 2A, then only you will be eligible to take credit. Another interesting point in this update is that this kind of a matching concept was there under a erstwhile VAT regime, and obviously it was subjected to judicial scrutiny, where it was held in favor of SSC that where the government or the law cannot put restriction on availability of credit based on the compliances to be made by the suppliers. So that has already been subjected to judicial scrutiny and all, and there is a case of Arise India where it was given in favor of SSC and against the government. So again, to our mind, this could be still be challenged, and there could be a positive outcome should be coming in near future on this part. The third aspect is that the government has given a well talked about relief, where they proposed in their council meeting that the interest liability should be only on net liability. So that amendment has been made effective retrospectively from 1st July. This is yet to be made effective. So once all these changes are notified, then it will become effective. Another interesting aspect which has done, as we discussed, that the government is continuously trying to cover up their mistake, means they can't have the kind of a delegated legislation to overcome the sections and act. So what has happened that there was a rule which restrict the refund of GST on certain supplies. So that was introduced through rule, but now government has realized that their mistake, that it could be subject to judicial scrutiny. Now they have made a specific provision under IGST Act that the export on payment of IGST will only be available to the specified exporters, not to all. So again, it is a kind of a covering up their mistake which they have done, and they know it could be subject to judicial scrutiny. So that is what this space needs to be watch out for, what kind of a category of exporters are notified which can have this facility of export on payment of IGST. Similarly, if we go by the section 16 of IGST Act, it was mentioned that any supplies made to SEZ developer and unit was given a blanket exemption and a category of classification of zero rated. Now they have added an additional word which is authorized operation. So any supplies made by the DTA suppliers to SEZ developer and unit must pass through the touchstone of authorized operations. So now not all supplies would be considered as a zero rated, only those supplies which are for the authorized operations of developer and unit would be eligible for zero rating. Though our finance minister has put emphasis that they are working a lot to make the GST laws smoothen and all this process smoothen. One of the breather which has come in this union budget is that now annual return and reconciliation statement has been made to be filed on a self-certification basis rather than to be certified by a chartered accountant, cost accountant, or a notified professional. So again, we feel that it's a good move to reduce the burden. But ultimately now instead of a proper audited statement to be filed, only an unaudited version is to be filed, but work will still be there to reconcile the books of account with the GSTR return. One more interesting aspect that that whenever we do export, now a timeline has been fixed to realize this money from the buyer abroad. Otherwise, whatever we have obtained would be required to give it back to the government along with interest within 30 days. So again, why it has been proposed to be part of the act, because it was not coming out very clearly earlier. It was only part of the bond and undertaking and not forming part of the act itself. So again, government realized that there could be a validity challenge under this provision, so they have made it as a part of law. So we need to be very careful that whenever we are making any export of goods, we need to realize the sales proceed as per the timeline prescribed by RBI under FEMA Act. Otherwise, we would be required to pay it back along with interest. Commissioner's power has been enlarged now they have been given a wide power to attach any property. Earlier, it was a bit restricted to a certain category of offences and certain category of proceedings. Now it has been widened enough to cover under, in fact, in the provisional assessment as well, and the other aspect as well. So that's why they have given a wide power to commissioner to protect the revenue. Now we know that any person, if there is a fraudulent movement of goods where the goods have been detained by the enforcement people while goods are being moved and goods are being moved from one location to another. Now there is a penalty provisions have been increased from existing 100% penalty to 200% penalty. So what is the interesting to note here is that there was earlier the provision says that the 100% was linked with the tax and penalty. Now they have delinked this provisions from taxes, and now the penalty at the rate of 200% would be required to be paid when owner of goods has come forward for payment. And whereas the owner of good is not coming forward for payment, then the penalty equal to 50% of goods value or 200% of tax value, whichever is higher, would be levied. Now, in order to appeal against all those detention and confiscation, 25% of the pre-deposit would be required to be made in order to have the appeal heard in this forum, in appellate forum. Moving on to customs, we know that a lot of push has been there in Atmanirbhar Bharat to promote our domestic industry for manufacturing and also. So there is a lot of thrust on Atmanirbhar Bharat. And while I was listening to Nishit for the direct tax proposal, I got a ticker that the Atmanirbharta has been considered as a Hindi word by Oxford, Hindi word of 2020 by Oxford. So that is also a good move. So now, in order to boost the domestic industries, a lot of rationalization has been done in customs, where a lot of imported goods, the duty on a lot of imported goods have been increased from 5% to 75%, and so on. So there are these goods which has been increased. Mainly, it is a manufacturing of mobile phones. A lot of components which are required for manufacturing of mobile phones the duty has been increased on that to boost the domestic manufacturing and all. Similarly, carbon black, which is used for manufacturing of the rubber material, Am I audible?
Yes, Lucky.
Yeah, apologize. There is a power cut in between. I really apologize for that. Yeah. So coming back to the custom proposals, a new agriculture infrastructure and development as AIDC has been proposed, and we know that this is in order to promote the agriculture infrastructure and development for that. So now what has been proposed that the 2.5% of AIDC will be there, which would be levied on products to be imported. Now, to accommodate this AIDC, the BCD on several products has been reduced to offset the impact of AIDC. And it has been clarified that the AIDC exemption will not be applicable on UUs and FTA and advanced authorization scheme. Now, again, in order to increase the rapid transportation, the high-speed rail projects have been exempted by project import scheme. So exemption has been given for any goods imported to be imported for high-speed rail projects in India. Now, just like GST and we have a common portal, it has been proposed that under customs also there would be a common customs electronic portal, which will be there to facilitate the registration, filing, and amending the bill of entry, shipping bill, payment of duties, and for communicating with the importer, like sending any notice, order, summons, and etc. Now in GST, we have seen that these kind of provisions have already been challenged, where the communication is being made through this portal. It would be interesting to see whether this custom electronic portal also will face similar kind of issue or not. To our mind, it could again be a subject matter of judicial scrutiny if the notices, orders, and everything is being delivered through electronic portal. One more interesting amendment which has been proposed is that now bill of entry can be filed before 1 day ahead of arrival of vessel, where the earlier requirement was that it was end of the next day. So again, it would help us to faster clearance of goods for the importers. Some stringent measures have been pronounced under customs law, where it can be where it is mentioned that the goods can be confiscated where any unlawful refund or remission is being made relating to such goods. So that's what it's a very strict measures have been taken to avoid any unlawful benefits being extracted by the exporter. Similarly, just like we have a recovery provisions under GST Act to recover any ITC which is being claimed fraudulently. Now, if any goods which has been presented for export on which wrong availment of ITC was there, the similar penalty provisions have been incorporated or being incorporated in Customs Act to have to levy a penalty on that. In order to streamline all those exemptions which are there in customs, there are more than 400 exemptions available under customs law, which is kind of difficult to comprehend. Now, Finance Minister has said that there would be a sunset clause for these conditional exemptions. Now, all those exemptions will expire, will have a sunset clause on 31st March 2023, unless otherwise prescribed a different date. And going forward, any conditional exemption which will be pronounced in future will have a shelf life of 2 years from the end of financial year in which this is pronounced, right? So again, we will have a limited availability of exemptions for the certain notified categories. A welcome move has been introduced as far as inquiry and investigations are concerned, where assessee was put into the dark, where there is no clarity when the matter will reach finality. Now it is a welcome move has been pronounced, where all the inquiries and investigation has to be completed within 2 years, and only 1 year extension will be granted subject to approval from the relevant officer in this regard. So it's a welcome move to have a certainty on pending litigations. But interesting to note that this provisions will be applicable for any inquiry and investigation which is being initiated after the enactment and not before that. So again, it is a welcome move. Excise, we know that the agriculture infrastructure and development cess has been pronounced. So similarly, the motor spirit, commonly known as petrol, will have a 2.5 per liter of AIDC, and similarly diesel will suffer a 4 per liter AIDC on this thing. And these are the kind of goods on which rationalization has been done on where the custom duty has been increased to promote the Atmanirbhar campaign. So like semi-precious stone, safety glasses, toughened glasses, raw silk, as we discussed that the parts and components required for manufacturing of mobile phone has increased, the duty has been increased from nil to 2.5%. So similarly, yeah, Manoj, I'm done with IDT proposals. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Lucky. Thank you, Nishit. Yes, we do have a series of questions which have come in, and we are happy to take them one after the other. So first one is on customs, on the custom portal. Is there a duplication of the EDPMS and IDPMS?
For which, Manoj? I think this is for IDT, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
You can answer in yes or no and brief, because we have a few more to go.
Yeah, we can say that it anyway, that's all those payment mechanism has been linked to EPDMS system and all, where the monitoring is happening for tracking the export proceed. So that we can say that yes, it is in order to strengthen the overall tracking mechanism for export and import.
Okay, thank you. Will tax on CPF interest will also be for all CPF paid so far, or only on the amount that will be paid from now on?
So it would be, Monas Nishit here. So it would be from the contribution made from this year onwards. That is the next year onwards. That's what the budget proposal state. And as I mentioned on whether what will happen on interest. So because you make a contribution next year, you earn interest, whether that interest also will get taxed because you will earn interest on interest, that has not been clarified, and they are going to come out with detailed guidelines on that.
Thank you. Thank you. Lucky, the next one is for you. What is considered as an authorized unit or supplier? Emphasis on the word authorized. If you could define. What is considered as an authorized?
Yeah, so I think the question is relevant for SEZ unit, if I'm not mistaken. So authorized means we know that the SEZ, there is a specific policy and act to govern the SEZ units and developer. So whatever has been authorized by that authority will be considered as an authorized operations.
Okay.
Right? We know that certain specified activities are only allowed to be undertaken by SEZ units. So that.
Thank you.
We need to link it from the SEZ authority's perspective.
Thank you. Next one, is the auto industry impacted by the increase in tariff duties?
Yeah, if you see, there are one particular entry which we have seen, that there is a toughened glass on which duty has been increased. So if the auto industry was depending upon imported material, then obviously we see a impact on auto industry.
All right.
But
thank
apart
you.
from that, we couldn't find any other thing which could be impacting on auto industry in this budget.
Okay. Okay, something, I mean, if you would like to take this right now, something very briefly and precisely, if you could state some direct benefits to foreign company subsidiaries in India. Is there something that you would like to comment on this? What in this budget has um, shown any direct benefits to foreign companies in India, subsidiaries?
So there is no direct benefit as such to subsidiaries of foreign company, except the fact that there is no new tax and they are continuing with the existing regime. That's the kind of biggest thing which has come out of this budget for the corporates. And obviously the overall spending with the government has planned may in a way indirectly impact those subsidiaries by getting government orders and stuff like that. And mainly setting up of the AAR board to get faster resolution to tax issues and
Okay.
everything going faceless. That's it.
Okay, okay. Nishit, I think again another one for you. Um, the 1.5 lakh relief interest paid, which is over and above the existing or inclusive amount specifically for home loans.
It is over and above.
It is over and above. Okay, thank you. Perhaps we'll take last two questions. Would reduction in steel duty from 12.5 to 7.5 have some benefit to the auto industry?
Again, if we see the people or the industry which is dependent upon import of steel, definitely we see a benefit getting passed on to those auto manufacturers.
Okay. Okay. And this is, I would say, a slightly important one on Provident Fund. So PF contribution of 2.5 lakhs includes for only employee contribution or employee plus employer?
No, it is for the employee contribution and it is in excess of 2.5 lakhs. So up to 2.5 lakhs, there is no issue. The contribution which you make over and above 2.5 lakhs would get impacted with this new amendment.
Okay. All right. I think with this, we'll keep this as the last question, gentlemen. I request the audience, please continue to post your questions. Someone from SKP will definitely get back to you on this. And thank you very much. And I request my colleague Dorel to give the vote of thanks and just quickly let us know what is there in store for all of you planned for February and March. Dorel, over to you.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Monaz. So on behalf of the Indo-German Chamber of Commerce, we would like to thank our knowledge collaborator for this session. Next time, SKP and our panelists, Mr. Nishit Parikh and Mr. Lucky Ahuja. It is very important and relevant post-budget session. We thank you all, dear attendees, for your participation and listening so very patiently. Please do write to us sharing your valuable feedback. We'd also like to take this opportunity to inform you all of our forthcoming event, the Stuttgart Meets Mumbai Wine Festival, which is being held digitally from 22nd to the 28th of February 2021. Highlights of the event would include virtual exhibitions, networking sessions, Indo-German dance, art, cultural exchange programs, interactive webinars, and German culinary delights. More details will be announced on our website and social media handles shortly. So do stay tuned. Last but certainly not least, an appreciative note of thanks to the events team, namely Sana, Mona, Mira, Hani, including Nikhil and Samia for successfully putting this webinar together. And a very special thank you to Mr. Desai for his support in this webinar. Thank you. Until next time, keep well and stay safe. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, IGCC. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
all. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lucky, Nishit, Amiha, Jiten from the SKP team. Thank you,
Yeah.
colleagues
Thanks,
of
Monish.
IGCC. Yes, yes.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.